This is Optimal Living Daily, episode 924, Seeing the World Can Change Your World, by Amanda Kendle with CaitFlanders.com, and I'm Justin Malik. Happy Friday, and welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you're new here. This is where I simply read to you every single day of the year, including weekends and holidays. And before we get to today's post, coming in from a guest author on Cait Flanders' site, thank you to Gusto. Payroll and benefits are hard, especially when you're a small business. You do not have time to be an expert in things like taxes and regulations, and old school payroll providers just aren't built for the way you work today. Gusto is making payroll, benefits, and HR easy for small businesses. Modern technology does the heavy lifting, so it's easy for you to get it right. In fact, 9 out of 10 users say Gusto is easier to use than other payroll solutions, and I agree. You no longer have to be a big company to get great technology, great benefits, and great service for your team. So to help support the show, Gusto is offering our listeners an exclusive limited time deal. Sign up today and you'll get 3 months free once you run your first payroll. Just go to gusto.com/old. For now, let's get to the post as we optimize your life. Seeing the World Can Change Your World, by Amanda Kendle with CaitFlanders.com. Travel has been part of my life since I was 9 years old, when my parents packed us up for a 6-month motorhome trip around Europe. Thanks to Australia's long service leave provisions, my dad could take 6 months off work and still get paid, so off we went. It was a low-budget trip with lots of simple meals and days spent playing in local parks, following the principles of slow travel long before anyone started to describe it that way. To say that the travel bug bit me on that trip would be an understatement, and so much of my life, and let's be honest, my money, has been spent on travel ever since. In my teens and early 20s, I couldn't really explain my desire to travel more. I just knew I wanted to do it. I grew up in Perth, Western Australia, which is a gorgeous city, but is known to many as the most isolated city in the world. Even the next significant city is close to a 2-day drive away. It's improved a lot thanks to the internet age, but Perth in the past really lagged behind the rest of the world, and it felt stifling growing up here. Most people from my age group have moved away at least for a few years. Some come back, others never do. It wasn't until I finally left Perth after several failed attempts and moved to teach English in Japan at the age of 25 that I finally began to understand why I wanted to travel. When I'm traveling, I really and truly feel alive. Leaving behind the humdrum of daily home life and exploring cultural differences, meeting people who speak different languages and taking in amazing landscapes and enticing cities, all of this gives me so much energy and inspiration. But even more than making me feel properly alive, traveling has changed me and taught me so much. Most of my core values are thoughts I developed from my experiences living and traveling throughout Asia and Europe. Empathy for others, especially others who have a different background to me, is something I learned when I had to understand why my Japanese friends were so worried about making a mistake speaking English. Acknowledging and accepting different viewpoints was something I understood after chatting many times with friends in Slovakia about how their life had been different under socialism and capitalism. Traveling also taught me confidence and the quiet ability to know that everything will work out okay eventually. When I left Australia, I'd been suffering from bouts of severe anxiety since my late teens, and I had phobias of driving on highways, of flying, of being in elevators. But removing myself from the place where it all started and opening myself up to these new experiences of the world changed everything. I lived in buildings where I could only reach my apartment in an elevator, and doing that every day dissolved that phobia. I loved so much to see new countries, and flying was often the only way, so I kept doing it until I didn't have a panic attack on takeoff. I still don't love driving on highways, but I pushed myself enough that I managed to pass my German driving license test, including a stint on the Autobahn. I could go on, but suffice to say, when I think about what makes up my personality and outlook on the world, I know that all of it has been influenced oh so heavily by my travels. And now I have a 7-year-old son, and I'm back in Perth. It's such a big responsibility trying to shape the way a small human being thinks, but I'm trying to use what influence I have as effectively as possible. So far, I've raised him to love to travel and to not really see differences, but to see the similarities that we all have. Because after all, we are all human. When he plays with his Lego or his cars and trucks and planes, so often his games turn into experiences on a worldwide scale. His Lego car is driving some Lego guys to the airport to fly to Iceland and see the puffins. His trucks are carrying sumo wrestlers and taiko drums and sushi stands for a festival in Japan. It warms my heart. As a single parent, I don't have a huge budget, and remember, we live in Perth, the most isolated city on the planet. But travel is important, and I find ways to take my son traveling as often as possible, usually abroad once or twice a year at least. It changes him every time. Just before our most recent trip to Malaysia and Singapore, he'd been getting stressed in school and was emotionally pretty worn down. By the first night of our trip, it was like a huge weight had lifted off him, and he was back being a happy-go-lucky 7-year-old. He brought that feeling back from our trip, and I saw him run so confidently into school, restored by the same inspirational feeling that travel gives me too. My son hasn't even yet reached the age I was when I first traveled, and he's been to a dozen different countries and experienced so many varied cultures and people. When I look at how much traveling has impacted my life, and to think that at his age none of that had started, I feel proud that I'm able to give him these amazing lessons that are shaping his personality and thinking. And I look forward to traveling with him to many more places and watching both of us continue to grow through travel. You just listened to the post titled, Seeing the World Can Change Your World by Amanda Kendle with CaitFlanders.com. And she's a friend of Cait's. You can find more info about her at notaballerina.com. And don't forget to take care of the payroll and benefits for your team. Gusto is offering our listeners an exclusive limited time deal. Sign up today and you'll get 3 months free once you run your first payroll. Just go to gusto.com/old. And I'll leave it there. Have a great rest of your day and start to your weekend if you're listening in real time. And I'll see you tomorrow where your optimal life awaits.